Yes.
Actually, I don't think that it's necessary since there is no one member from the public present, and the comments will be read as submitted via email and e-comment.
Perfect. Thank you.
Real quick, what about the
Applicant.
Yeah.
We do have an applicant.
That's, if you'd like her to unmute, then she can provide him. There you go.
I don't know the exact wording, but do you promise to tell the truth in all your testimony that you will give tonight?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Unless anyone has better wording, we'll use that for now. Sorry. This brings us to ex parte communications. This section is intended to allow all officials the opportunity to reveal any disclosure or ex parte communication about the following public hearings. Commissioner Rodriguez, do you have any ex parte communications?
No.
Commissioner Topero?
No.
Commissioner Stutzenberg?
No.
Commissioner Ung?
No.
Commissioner Hensley?
Yes. I talked to one member of the public and staff.
Vice Chair Glad?
No.
And I also spoke to a member of the public on item I-1.
Before you continue, may I just chime in for one moment? I just wanted to let you know, just for housekeeping purposes, there were no e-comments or comments submitted for the items on consent submitted. And as we go along, if on each item, before we take a vote, if you could ask for any comments, just as a reminder.
Perfect. No, thank you.
Otherwise, I'll have to interrupt, and I don't want to do that. Okay.
Feel free to interrupt. If I'm doing something wrong, please stop me. All right, this takes us to our public hearings. Item I-1, this is consideration of an exemption declaration and lot line adjustment to restore 3 underlying lots to the original subdivision configuration, creating 3 legal conforming parcels on properties located in a single-family residential R1A zone. This is location 1731 to 1735 Armour Lane, case number LLA 2021-01. The recommendation is to adopt a resolution approving the exemption declaration and lot line adjustment, subject to the findings and conditions contained therein. Do we need a motion to open the public hearing at this point?
So moved. Open the public hearing.
Motion by Commissioner Rodriguez. Was that a second by Commissioner
Second, yes.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Yes.
Commissioner Topero.
Yes.
Commissioner Stutzenberg.
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yes.
Vice Chair Glad.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. Does staff have a report for us tonight?
Yes, this is Director Brandy Forbes with Community Development, and I wanted to introduce Stacy Kinsella. She's our Associate Planner, and she is going to provide the presentation for this evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners. The subject sites are located on Armour near Harkis Lane. The 3 lots are developed with 2 one-story single-family residences. They were constructed by the same owner back in 1957. This is, of course, the R1A zone with standard 25 by 100 foot lots. At some point in time, Lot 40 was deeded 5 feet from Lot 41. That site is now legally 30 feet in width. Lot 42 is tied to the remaining 20 feet of Lot 41. That lot now functions as a 40-foot wide lot. After the house is demolished, Lot 41 will revert back to 25 feet. This leaves Lot 41 as a substandard 20-foot wide lot. The proposal would return the lots back to the standard 25 feet in width. Each of the lots is 100 feet in depth, which meets the zoning code. The minimum lot size in the R1A zone is 2,500 square feet. The width, of course, is 25 feet, and the depth is 100 feet. Lot 41 is substandard. It's only 20 feet in width and 2,000 square feet in overall size. With 3-foot required side yards, this would leave this lot with only a 14-foot wide house. They would not be able to accommodate the required 2-car garage, and in order to meet the outdoor living space, they would have to increase the rear required setback from 16 feet to 20 feet. This adjustment would create code-conforming lots consistent with the intent with the development standards. Lots 40 and 41 will conform to the lot standards as outlined within the zoning ordinance. And this adjustment would ensure that lot 41 is fully buildable, consistent with the development pattern in this neighborhood. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission make the findings as set forth in the draft resolution, adopt the exemption declaration, and approve the lot line adjustment. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff?
Yeah, question on the first page, I think it was. Could you go back to that, please? This is Rolf. Next one down. Next one. So this is it zoned R1A or zoned R1? Because on my map of the city, it shows R1.
It's R1A. Do you want me to pull back to the zoning map? I have it in this screen here. This is R1A.
Okay, I see it there. It doesn't show up that on the zoning map I was given, but that may not be current. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Hensley?
Yeah, a couple questions for staff. After the lot line adjustment, if the zoning lots is standard, is there any design guidelines for R1A in this neighborhood?
Technically, no, it is not included in our residential design guidelines. It just reverts back to what's allowed within the development standards, as well as the general plan.
Okay, and so there's no floor area ratio defined for R1A zones?
That's correct. So what's allowed to be built in the floor area, it's based upon those setbacks and the height limits, which is 30 feet.
Okay, and in the proposed resolution tonight, is there anything binding on the design images we saw or the layout or anything, or is it just the lot line?
So the site plan you see and the elevation drawings, those are purely conceptual. So if this is approved tonight, then they have to provide fully detailed drawings showing that they meet the development standards.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
Yeah, just a point of correction on page 55 of our packet, which is the City of Redondo Beach. Looks like the map showing lot line adjustment on 1731 and 1735 Armour Lane. Under owner's information, it lists it as 731 and 736 Armour Lane. So just a minor typo, it looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions for staff? Would the applicant like to state anything about the project, the proposed lot line adjustment?
I'm here. I don't know if you can hear me or see me.
We can hear you.
Okay, let's see.
And we can see you.
Okay, great. Let's see. There we go. Good evening, commissioners. I am Stacy Strauss from Soror and Associates, and I'm with you tonight on behalf of the property owner seeking your approval on a modification to the lot line between two adjacent parcels. And I'd first like to thank you for your time this evening and the work you do for our city, but also during this unusual time. I'd also like to thank the staff, Lauren Sablon from the Department of Engineering, and specifically Associate Planner Kinsella for her work in review and guidance on this project. These are trying times, and Ms. Kinsella has remained available and accessible and has been greatly appreciated. Associate Planner Kinsella provided you a comprehensive overview of the request, and I'm also available to answer any questions you may have. In summary, the applicant is the owner of 3 adjacent parcels. These are lots on the 1700 block of Armour Lane in Redondo Beach, and the lots were originally, when they were laid out with the city, 25 feet wide by 100 feet in length, very similar to every other lot in this block. In this R1A zone, prior to the law changing, approximately, I would say 30 years ago, it was common for property owners to give land by grant deed. And that is likely what happened here. In addition, because it was not required to record a formal document such as a lot line adjustment or a lot merger at the time, a structure was then built over the lot line. That would not be a practice today. The county assessor, when this happens, when a structure is built over a lot line and when they're under common ownership, the county assessor notes for tax purposes and puts a bracket, that's a little Z, across the lot line and assesses the land to one owner in one tax bill. Once the structure, though, is demolished and absent a formal act of having been merged, if we had already merged this or we had adjusted the lot line, since it wasn't the case, if you haven't done either of those things or recorded a final map or some formal action, once that structure is demolished, the bracket is then removed by the county assessor and it reverts the lot line back to its original configuration. In the case of lots 40 and 41, simply demolishing the structure will remove the bracket, but it will not change the 5 feet that were deeded from deeded to lot 40 from lot 41. Thus, it leaves lot 41 as a non-conforming lot with little that can be done to it. If there's additional information I can answer for you, I'm happy to do that. I wanted to jump though ahead and let you know that we did hear a couple questions that came in prior to the hearing tonight and wanted to make sure we addressed those for you. One was a concern from a nearby property owner about the proposed development. And again, I think our planner addressed that question, which is that this is simply just a request about adjusting the lot line tonight. This is about making lots that are in conformance with the city's plan and zoning ordinance. Any then proposal for development that follows will be fully in compliance, will not seek any variance to any code, height, setbacks, etc. This is just simply a request to adjust the lot lines back to their original configuration, the way the city was laid out. Let's see. There was also another question about the developer. The owner is actually an LLC, but that LLC is actually managed by a developer named Thomas James Homes. And many of you are familiar with other applications that have come before you, especially the city staff. And the question was, though, that came up tonight was, has this developer built anything else in our city? And the answer is yes. The developer's built approximately 22 units in our city and happily contributes to the community with beautiful developments that have been very well received and has appreciated being a big part of Redondo Beach in the past couple of years. At this time, I'm available for questions from you, and I would like to also ask your approval of this request and that the developer has no issues with any of the conditions set before you in the resolution.
Right, thank you for your time and for your presentation. Do any commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Hensley.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. You said that they had done 22 homes. Have any of those homes been R1A lot homes in Redondo Beach?
That is a good question. May I answer that now?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. No, as far as I understand, I primarily work with this applicant in their subdivision projects. So these have all been detached condominiums so far, built to look very similar to an R1 home, though. So they've all been detached condominiums, very similar to townhome style. And I can point you to a couple of examples that have been approved actually and built and have gone to market and have sold, if you like.
No, I think that's okay. I was just interested mostly in the R1A zoning. And do you have fixed, decided designs? Of course, we saw concepts in this material, but do they have fixed designs already, or not?
That I cannot speak to their specific plans. They had conceptually designed these products for conformity to the zoning, for consistency with the community, for based on interest from the community.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other commission questions for the applicant? All right, and thank you. Are there any commissioner questions for staff or comments?
I do have one question for staff. At what point will this generate an additional a Quimby fee? Because the split from 2 to 3 should generate one. Will it be when they do the application for the actual buildings, or when will that happen?
Quimby fees get applied during the plan check permit phase with the building division. I'd have to ask Director Forbes to see if this would qualify for Quimby fees.
Yeah, I'd have to check on that too. But when it's when they have to pay the fee is when they're actually pulling the permit. So they'll go through plan check and they'll pay that Quimby fee at the time that they pull the building permit.
Yeah, thank you. But this will generate one Quimby fee.
Sean, do you have it?
Yeah, it would, yes. It would. We would assess that at the time for the third unit built on the now recognized 3 lots.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for anyone, or would anyone like to make a motion?
Before you make the motion, can I just advise you that there have been no new e-comments submitted? However, I will ask Analyst Portalese to advise if there's any new emails received.
Let me check right now. And then, so no new emails received. I would just call your attention to the one blue folder item that came in before the meeting. It was an email from a resident with a comment. I'd be happy to read that if you'd like. Otherwise, you did receive and file it. So I'll leave that up to the chair.
Does anyone need that read into the record? Did everyone get a copy of the blue folder item? Or anyone not get a copy of the blue folder items, I guess?
No, I think we've clarified that this is just the application for the lot line split. We can't predict what will be built upon those, but it'll have to conform to the whatever standards in that area.
That is affirmative.
And Chair, I think we have to close the public hearing and then they can make a motion.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
A motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
First by Commissioner Ung and a second by Commissioner Topero to close the public hearing. And roll call vote will be Commissioner Rodriguez,
Yes.
Commissioner Topero,
Yes.
Commissioner Stretzenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Glad
Yes.
will also vote yes. The public hearing is now closed. And I don't see any hands raised, so if there's no other questions or comments, would anyone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution approving the exemption declaration and lot line adjustment subject to the findings and conditions contained in our staff report.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ung to approve as directed, and a second from Commissioner Glad. I'll do another roll call vote here. Commissioner Rodriguez?
Oh,
Yes.
Chair Alder.
Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry, I had my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Commissioner Hensley, I
Okay.
apologize.
That's okay. I was hoping that the public comment could be read in before we voted. I know we all received a copy, but I would like it to be read if possible before we voted.
Of course, yeah. I'll pull it up right now.
Well, I guess is that okay with the other commissioners? Is that
Sure.
Okay. And then after it's read, I have a comment to make before we make the vote, if that's okay.
Okay. So this is from resident Warren Paul, that lives at 1730 Armour Lane. Says, I've been a homeowner for 21 years, living directly across the street from 1731 through 1735 Armour Lane. While I don't have any issues with zoning into 3 lots, I do not support if the zoning will allow 3-story houses, similar to what is being built in the neighborhood. The new 3-story houses also extend the structure footprint further towards the street and further towards the rear. If tonight's hearing involves allowing these changes, I oppose without reservation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And for my comment, when I saw that comment from the public today, it very similarly matches my feeling. So tonight before us is only the lot line adjustment. And maybe I should start before that I live about 4/10 of a mile away from this property. So not far enough to be financially impacted, but close enough to know the neighborhood. And my personal home is a R1A lot. So my comment is that after we approve, if the commission approves the lot line adjustment, there is no design guideline in this neighborhood. It's not a part of our structure, and what's being built currently or in the neighborhood is not in character with what my opinion, and not in character with other homes in the neighborhood. So I was hoping to have some other restrictions or something I could try to do to make sure that what is built, which the concept looks fine, but we're not approving the concept and the concept is not binding. So that's my concern with this motion, not the lot line split, but just what may be built, 3 2,600 square foot houses, which all meet the setbacks and everything, but they're not in standing with the general plan aesthetic of the neighborhood. So that's my comment, but I won't make any other motions, and we'll vote on the motion that was made.
So we do have a motion and a second then. I apologize for missing your hand there, Commissioner Hensley. I'll pay closer attention.
I have a quick question for city staff. The letter that came in from 1731, that's directly across the street. That is a 25 by 100 lot as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second to approve the lot line adjustment, the adopt a resolution approving exemption declaration and lot line adjustment subject to the findings and conditions contained therein. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Yes.
Commissioner Tuppero.
Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Ung.
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley.
Sorry, I was on mute. No.
Vice Chair Glad.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. So it passes 6 ayes and 1 nay. That takes us to items continued from previous agendas. I don't think we have anything here. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Correct.
Sorry.
That takes us to section K, items for discussion, presentation, or action. These are items for discussion prior to action, which includes a discussion and consideration of briefing on state-adopted accessory dwelling unit-related legislation. The recommendation is to receive and file, and there is a little bit of paper on this. There's a staff report. This would be great to hear.
Great, thank you. And thank you, commissioners, for having us here tonight via Zoom. We briefly had touched on the latest state legislation regarding accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. We had done that briefly at our February Planning Commission meeting. I wanted to give a bit more of an update, and it's a lot, I know, but I wanted to give that information before we get to a point of introducing the ordinances. We will consider the ordinances themselves at a future meeting when we can offer a more robust public participation option. So I'll go through kind of what the state regulations offer and kind of what we're considering for the small little window of what we have available to us as a municipality. In 2019, the State Senate Assembly adopted several bills pertaining to housing, specifically ADUs, and the governor had signed those into law in October. On January 10th, the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, provided a summary of those changes and the actual adopted legislation itself. So there were several bills that had been adopted, and it was important to evaluate what sequence they were signed into law, because that determined what the actual law was. So the HCD summary was really critical in understanding what the final adopted law was. Once we had that, the city attorney's office was able to gain further information on the appropriate implementation of that. The most significant item was the designation of streamlined ADUs versus non-streamlined ADUs. And this distinction will be incorporated into the city's proposed ADU ordinances. Some of the basic changes to the legislation in general regarding ADUs is that we must allow ADUs in all areas zoned to allow residential, and that includes multifamily and mixed use, whereas previously we could limit that to single family. And junior ADUs, they're just a smaller within the main structure. Those must be allowed in certain streamlined conditions, and I'll get to those streamlined in a minute. The minimum lot size requirement that we had, that can no longer be required. And owner occupancy restrictions are no longer permitted. That will sunset in 2025, but any permit that's issued from the beginning of this year to January 1st of 2025 cannot have that restriction. Jurisdictions may prohibit rentals of less than 30 days on ADUs, so it it addresses, we at least can address any of the short-term rental Airbnb type uses. Setbacks, heights, unit sizes, and parking all vary based on whether it's streamlined or non-streamlined, and I can go through those in just a second. The most significant thing was that there are 4 categories of streamlined ADUs. Regardless of any other provisions, if the streamlined ADU meets those standards, those required standards for the streamlined, a city must approve the application and may not impose any other standards. So under these streamlined, we can't add different things like, oh, well, we want that to only be a single story, or, we want that to have this kind of aesthetic. It really has to be limited only to the things that the state regulations allow you to regulate. So I'll go into the streamlined first. For single family, so there are 2 types of streamlined in single family and 2 types of streamlined in multifamily. So in single family, the first one is wholly within. So it would be one ADU or junior ADU that would be allowed on a lot with an existing or proposed single family residence. The ADU or junior ADU must be wholly within the existing or proposed single family residence or existing attached accessory structure. It can have an expansion of up to 150 square feet if that expansion is just to accommodate ingress and egress. So that would be really just within the confines of the existing single family structure. Direct exterior access is required for that ADU. Side and rear yard setbacks must be sufficient for fire safety, but because it's within the existing structure, it would meet whatever requirements were in place at the time that the structure was approved. No ADU size requirements can be imposed, so the owner could take up to however much of that main structure to make as the ADU, and the rest for the main house. So if they wanted to, say they had a 900 square foot home and they wanted to make the ADU, 600 square feet and the main structure 300 square feet, they have that capability, and we cannot limit that. Again, this is under the streamlined. The the JADU, there are limits for the junior accessory dwelling unit. This is, by the way, this particular Streamlined, this wholly within, is the only one where a junior ADU would be allowed. And the limits that can be imposed is a maximum of 500 square feet. They would have to record a deed restriction prohibiting separate sale, limiting the size, allowing, they have to rent one or the other. Like you can, only with a junior ADU, you can require owner occupancy requirements. So the second Streamlined is a new detached ADU. So in this case, you've got it's a single family, it's on a lot with an existing or proposed single family residence. It's in residential or mixed use zoning because that's what we have to allow. It would be completely detached from the single family residence. Now, in this circumstance, if you're building an ADU detached, brand new, not converting something, but brand new, under this circumstance, you could actually combine it with a junior ADU. So that is the one case in single family where you could have an ADU and a junior ADU. And this is not what I'm proposing. This is what the state's requiring us to have to allow. With this, again, it would be detached from the single family residence, new construction. The conversion of a detached accessory structure would actually be a non-streamlined. So I'll get to that where we have a little bit more say. For that new detached Streamlined, you cannot require more than a 4-foot side and rear yard setback. Now, of course, they could propose to be further in the lot, but a 4-foot side and rear yard setback is what you have to allow. The maximum unit size on a new detached under Streamlined is 800 square feet, and the maximum height is 16 feet. Now, we can say that they have to have a 5-foot minimum distance between the structures if it's needed for fire protection. They could take other measures to meet fire protection, but we are putting that in there just so they're aware that if they're not meeting any of the other requirements, they'd have to have that 5-foot minimum distance. That's one of the things that we're looking at. So under this, as I mentioned, there's the 4-foot side and rear yard setback, 16-foot height limit, but unfortunately on the Streamlined, we can't do anything beyond this, so we wouldn't be allowed to say, like I mentioned before, do only a single story structure. So, and even with that 5-foot minimum distance, it's more just if it's needed for fire protection. If they use other building measures that meet the code that wouldn't require the 5 feet, then we can't impose that. So the third Streamlined is multifamily, and it's the conversion of a space in the existing structure. So you have to allow at least one ADU and up to 25% of the existing number of units in the existing multifamily dwelling unit for the number of ADUs. It has to be on a lot with an existing multifamily dwelling because it has to be within the existing structure. The ADU would be a conversion, or the ADUs, because it could be multiple, is a conversion of non-livable space of an existing structure. So they can't expand beyond it or go into the living spaces and try to reconfigure those. Instead, it would have to be spaces like the storage rooms, boiler rooms, passageways, attics, basements, garages. The ADU, there's no ADU size limit that can be imposed. So if they want to, convert a larger space of the garage to have a larger ADU unit, we can't limit the the size of the unit. It's just that the number of units would be based on the maximum would be 25% of the existing number of units. But one unit, if it was 3 units on the lot, you'd have to allow 1 unit. The fourth streamlined is for new detached on multifamily. So you've got the developer, or I should say the property owner of a multifamily dwelling property has the ability to convert this space for ADUs, but now they can also, if they have non-built-on space, or if they had something that's like a detached structure that's an accessory structure, they can convert that. Not more than 2 detached ADUs are allowed. It has to be on a lot with an existing multifamily dwelling, detached from the multifamily dwelling, and similar to that new detached single family, this would have the 4-foot side and rear yard setbacks, the 16-foot height limit. Again, though, with multifamily, no ADU size limit can be imposed. We did again put the 5-foot minimum distance between structures for fire protection. That's what we're putting into the draft. So those are the streamlined, and it's kind of what we're handed, and where we don't have the flexibility. For the streamlined, for all of the streamlined, I also wanted to go into the parking. In a coastal zone, there's the possibility that we might be able to require 1 parking space per ADU or JADU, provided on that same lot. That we still have to, it has to be run by Coastal Commission and HCD. Just so you're aware, the regulations they don't supersede the Coastal Commission, and the Coastal Commissions they're going to have concern with access to the waterfront and the amount of parking that if they're constructing a new ADU and they don't provide the parking for that, that's going to be more vehicles that are going to be taking away from the access to the waterfront. So I think that we might have a good opportunity if we plug that into our ordinance. On inland, the city cannot require parking for streamlined ADUs, and cannot require replacement parking of converted spaces. So if somebody's converting their garage, we can't require them to replace that parking. We are looking at having language in there, though, that if they are converting a garage, that they don't have to get rid of their driveway, because that's right now kind of a condition that we have in our code, but we would have that plugged in there that for conversion as an ADU, that they could still have that, so that we're at least keeping that concept that they could use that for parking, as replacement parking for what's going to be displaced. For coastal development permits, currently a CDP is required for an ADU in the coastal zone. Under our ordinance, but similar to the ordinance that we had approved last year, it was not certified by coastal, so it's not effective. But similar to that, we would, if it's wholly within the existing structure, we'd look at that being exempt, and then allowing for a hearing waiver for all the other ADUs. And that's really something that's driven more from the state wanting to see that these are, especially streamlined, are moving through. So for non-streamlined, and don't think that this is going to create a lot of extra capabilities for us, but there are a few. These would be for ADU applications that do not meet the standards for streamlining. The city can impose some standards, such as parking, height, setback, landscaping, architectural review, maximum size, and but that's limited. The city is is considering non-streamlined standards to apply to lots with existing or proposed single-family residence only. So in this case, with non-streamlined, so remember with the multifamily streamlined, it would have to be wholly within. So if they said, well, I want to convert this space that's wholly within, but then now I want to add on to it, that would no longer be streamlined. But we can limit the non-streamlined, so multifamily is not doesn't have any option for having an ADU. So with that, they'd have to meet any multifamily would have to meet the requirements of the streamlined in order to have an ADU. Another would be that lots with existing, I had that with the existing multifamily, then they would not be eligible for construction of ADUs under non-streamlined. And also we're looking to put in there that junior ADUs would not be allowed in the non-streamlined cases. So we're not creating, like, again, more junior ADU and ADU on a site. For the all of the non-streamlined, the ADUs could be limited to just single-family residential zoning. No minimum lot size can be imposed. The city cannot require owner occupancy similar to the streamlined. That will sunset January 2025. The ADU may be within, attached to, or detached from the existing single-family residence. So we can't really limit that, but the city can limit it so the ADU can just be on that where the existing or proposed single-family residence. The city can require that no existing ADU or JADU is already located on the site. The city can require that an ADU comply with the building height, setback, site coverage, floor area ratio, building envelope, and also payment of applicable fees when it's a non-streamlined. For size, although we can limit the size, we can't make the maximum any less than 850 square feet for a studio or one bedroom, or 1,000 square feet for a two bedroom or greater. And then also for size, we must still allow an efficiency unit, which is minimum. So the minimum for all of these would be 150 square feet. For entrances, we could restrict that attached ADUs must have a direct exterior access. We can restrict that an attached ADU gain access from the rear or side only. We can restrict that the detached ADU access is at least 10 feet from the property line. So at least we're really kind of protecting those backyards of the neighboring properties. For height limits, again, that 16-foot height comes into play. That's the maximum height. We have to allow up to 16 feet for detached, but we could limit the ADU to just one story. And I know that that's been something that the city council had wanted to stick to last year. For setbacks, if it's a conversion of an existing structure, then we can't require any setbacks. So say it's an existing garage that's on the property line, like the rear property line. If they want to convert that garage, we can't require them to then step in 4 feet. They can utilize the existing space, the existing footprint. However, say that garage is 400 square feet, and now they want to build the 850 square foot ADU, so they're going to expand that space. If that's on that rear property line, any addition has to be moved in that 4 feet from the property line. So at least the newer portion of the structure has to have that 4 foot setback. Let's see. And in this case, we can actually require the 5 foot minimum distance between structures without the caveat that that's only for fire safety purposes. For parking, again, in the coastal zone, there's that possibility that we might be able to require 1 parking space per ADU. On inland, and this is, remember, this is now for that non-streamlined. For inland, 1 space can be required per ADU. However, there's waivers if it's within half a mile of public transit, which is most of our community. And it's in the way they define public transit, we don't get to define that. It's a bus stop. So really, most of our community, I think we've done a map on it, and most of it's within a half mile. It's in a historic district. On-street parking permits are required, but not offered. So there's a lot of reasons that they could have the waiver. I think just the half mile from public transit takes away our capability of requiring parking for inland. Parking can be in tandem or setbacks, or in setbacks, and this is similar to what we had saw last year. Replacement spaces for garages and or carport demolition or conversion, we could require that in the coastal zone. But again, for that purpose of keeping the access to the waterfront. However, replacement cannot be required in the inland zone. So that's a little space where we have, a little control there. Same thing with the coastal development permit. And let's see. So since the conflicting local provisions are rendered null and void, what we adopted last year is not in effect. So we have to right now comply with what the state regulations are. So most of the applications we're seeing come in are landing in that streamlined anyway. So, but we really want to make sure that we have a little bit more control on the non-streamlined. Looking at things like if they're building an accessory structure that's a non-streamlined, that's detached, that it has to have the same materials as the main house, so that you don't have something completely off and different. That's one example. Some of the ones that I mentioned here, some of the things I mentioned here, like that you could limit it to 1 story, the parking for the replacement in the coastal zone. Those are the places where we have a little room. I hate to be the bearer of bad news when in talking to our special counsel, legal counsel on this. He was the bearer of bad news to me, and I kept saying, really, do we, one more hit? But this is where the state has gone. And they've really seen where municipalities have found different local choices, and they ended up doing away with a lot of those. For example, the minimum lot size, and this whole multifamily has the opportunity to have significant impacts on our community. So with that, like I said, we are working on the draft ordinances. We want to bring them to the Planning Commission at a public hearing at an upcoming meeting, but we want to be able to have a little bit more robust participation. One of the things we're looking at, just so you're aware, is being able to have call-in comments. So I think if we get to that point, then we can bring this to the Planning Commission, even in this virtual meeting world. So with that was a lot of information, I know. This is not our last conversation about this, but I wanted to, I didn't want to bear the bad news, but I wanted you to have the information about that streamlined versus non-streamlined and where our limits are.
Thank you for that comprehensive overview, Director Forbes. I know that's a lot to keep track of, and it's constantly changing, and it is unfortunately somewhat depressing, but thank you for keeping track of it. Do we have any other public comments besides the single blue folder item on this agenda item?
Chair Elder, there are no e-comments submitted, but I'll defer to Analyst Portalese to see if any new emails came in.
And Chair, no new emails came in.
Thank you. Commissioner Hensley?
Yeah, just a request if we could have the one public comment read to the record.
Of course. Okay. So it's a public comment from resident Holly Osborne. We used to have our ADU ordinance and owner occupancy requirement, such that the owner had to live on the property if there was an ADU. This was added by people in the Paulina neighborhood who were upset that someone from another city had scooped up a house and then added an ADU and was renting out both. Well, as you know, the legislature does not allow the owner occupancy requirement anymore. The landlord occupancy feature was strongly objected to by the developers and investors. Although if an owner does build a JADU on the property, the JADU has to be attached to either the main property or the ADU in the back, and the owner has to live in that building or has to be in the JADU. One of the reasons neighbors wanted a landlord occupancy requirement was to prevent an investor from buying a property, building an ADU in the back, and then renting out both to the max. Overcrowding, the more the merrier, the higher the rent, and it wrecks the parking in the neighborhood, etc. If a landlord had to live in one of the properties, he would be less likely to destroy his own neighborhood. All that was pre-COVID-19. Only now, if you can cram jam people into houses, you are also creating a COVID-19 petri dish. The question is, can there be a maximum number that a landlord can rent out his house to? What is to stop a slumlord from building an ADU with 2 bedrooms, putting in 4 bunk beds, and renting out to 8 people, and renting the main house to the max as well? Nothing. No, I'm not talking about an owner who lives in a house and happens to have a big family. Other states have requirements on the maximum number of unrelated adults that can live in a house. California has very lax laws in this regard. I'm just saying, in this pandemic world, restrictions on the number of people a landlord can rent out to should be considered. Holly Osborne.
Did you have any comment on that, Commissioner Hensley? You just want it read into the record?
Oh, no, I just want to have it read in the record. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yes, thank you. For Director Forbes, a couple of things. First one is at the bottom of page 5 of 6, or page 69 of our package. Can you get to that? Where it talks about parking in an inland zone.
Okay, parking, yes.
So the way it reads is kind of a double negative. It says that one space can be required per ADU provided on the same lot as the ADU unless on-street parking permits required but not offered to ADU occupants. So how does that play in with our preferential parking streets?
Right, you would think that if, it doesn't make sense, and that is what the state put in there. So I found that interesting. That wouldn't you think that if there is a restriction on parking that wouldn't allow the ADU to have parking on the street, wouldn't you think then you should have to provide the parking space on the lot? But so who knows what the intent was? Maybe that was what they intended, but the wording came out differently. Regardless, for our community, the half mile from public transit is going to be, enough to kick things out so that we can't have that requirement for the ADUs.
Okay, yeah, that would be an overriding thing.
But that was a state thing. It is actually written that way in the code. It wasn't a typo. I know exactly what you're thinking because it doesn't make logical sense. But that's how the state had it worded. So
would our preferential parking streets qualify as on-street parking permit? Because it's not 24-hour.
Yeah, but if those do not offer a parking permit for the ADU, then the ADU doesn't have to provide a parking space on the,
But it sounds like if we did offer them to the ADU occupant, then we could require it.
It's not like it has to meet all of these. It's truly all it's going to have to do is be within a half mile of transit.
Understood.
A bus stop. So, I mean, I get your point, and I think that would be interesting if we didn't have transit in our community, but, but going through that exercise, we don't need to because it's already going to be waived.
Well, and that may change in the future too. I'm thinking longer. It might. Just somebody, it was read in the record as something's a petri dish. Well, to me, public transit is another petri dish. So we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but
Yeah.
that you had the same thing to me. It's really convoluted, and it seems like a double negative that doesn't make sense.
I can say that most of the regulation language seems convoluted and very, it's very, parsing out that streamlined versus non-streamlined was really, because it was like, why does this allow 850 square feet and this allows 800 square feet? And that's where it lands in those different, the streamlined is all under one section and then everything else is under non-streamlined. So, but our attorney got that clarification from the attorneys from HCD. So, that it's not as if we're just interpreting it in the most strict way for us, but rather this is what, where that direction is from the state.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask about was the 16-foot height limit. It's measured from where to where?
So it doesn't clarify that in the state regulations, but I can tell you what we're looking to put in there. Hold on, let me find.
So I would interpret that a 16-foot height limit would never allow for 2 stories.
It would take a lot to get it, like they'd have to dig down, I think. I mean, are you going to bother to do that for an ADU? I think we said from the, let me see where I can find that draft language.
Yeah, especially when we get into sloped lots and the mean lot elevation and things like that.
I'm sorry, it'll take me just a second to find that. Okay. Measured from the lowest portion of the building that is above ground to the topmost portion of the roof, exclusive of chimneys or vents.
Okay, so it is to the topmost portion of the roof, not to a top sill or something like that.
No, so it's not like the wall height has to be 16 feet and then they could build above that and have some lofty space in there. Now they could do, if they wanted to try and fit a mezzanine kind of thing, development in that 16 feet height, they could try and make that happen, but it wouldn't be a second story.
Yeah, but basically this eliminates any second stories is what it means.
We've seen some creative types. But still it's 16 feet, right? So it's gonna have, but I think that restricting that when we can in the non-streamlined, we can do that. But otherwise, I think you're right. I think we've seen a lot of people come in and when they hear us sticking to that 16 feet, they realize that they just, especially when if they wanted to build, say, above a garage,
which is already 10 foot.
Right. Or whatever it is, they still have to hit a 7 foot 4 inches for the garage door clearance.
That's
so
correct. Yeah.
to hit that, already the first floor is 8 feet. So it would be what, 7 foot ceiling heights maybe in the ADU above it. So technically they could do that because it's not conversion of the garage space. They could do that as new construction ADU under Streamlined, as long as they're hitting that 16 feet and where it's built, it's 4 feet side and rear yard setback.
Yeah, still ill-defined, I guess, is the best way it can be interpreted.
This is not was certainly not the easiest regulations to maneuver around and see what they were trying to get at. But when you see the ordinances, we're going to try to be as creative as we can within what their confines are.
Yeah, to me it sounds like some non-builder said, "Oh, each floor is 8 foot, so 2 floors would be 16 feet," but that's just not true.
Let's not encourage the state to change that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you. And Director Forbes, I had a question because you had made references to certain latitude that the city would have on the non-streamlined ADUs with respect to historic resource protections. And I guess I was kind of curious because, we have a number of A-rated, historic homes, and I can just imagine, someone saying, well, gee, let me chop, take a portion of it and make an ADU. Are there any Mills Act protections on our historic structures?
No. So if somebody if they have their main structure, their main house, and that meets the, is on the historic R list or at all, if they want to do within, they could convert space within that. They would have to have a separate access, but they could convert some space of that historic structure within that structure.
Would we have the ability to insist on consistent materials to perform that?
Well, they wouldn't be changing the exterior of the house. The only exterior that they would have would be the 150 square feet of addition that they could do. I'd have to ask on that one. I don't know that, because that would be streamlined. I don't know that it sounds terrible, but only maybe if it's on a state registry or a national registry because of other restrictions that might supersede this. But I'd have to look into that one. If they were, say, converting the garage that's behind that historic structure, now if we're talking about a conversion of a detached space, then that's where we're looking at including where the materials have to match the so that there we would have some room, but it wouldn't be required. This is streamlined, so this is ministerial approval, so I don't know that would even go I don't know. We'll have to look in that and see if it would go to historic for the non-streamlined, but for streamlined, no, it's straight up ministerial approval.
And would they have all their tax incentives retained?
I'm wondering with the Mills Act, that's a really good point. I wonder with the Mills Act contract if there are restrictions in that contract itself. So that's a real, that might be where you can tie into, if they have that 150 square foot addition and, they wanted to change up materials or do something strange roof wise on that addition, where we might be able to limit it with the Mills Act contract. So we'll have to look at what the language is on those to see if that has, because that's a different restriction, right? That they might lose their tax incentive.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, levers that the city has to disincentivize certain behaviors.
Understood.
Okay. Well, that was it for me. Thank you.
Guest Commissioner Hensley.
Yeah, I had a couple questions for Director Forbes on this. Does Redondo Beach have any historic districts or just historic homes? Or is there a definition of historic district?
I think we do have historic districts. Am I right, Sean?
Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
But we do. There are a few blocks and areas around City Hall that are identified as historic districts.
Okay, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that. But one other thing is all these, is 100% of the laws that were passed in 2019 have sunsets of 2025, or just some of them?
No. That would be great.
Not all, sorry, I didn't mean all. I mean,
No, the only
some-
one that's the
yeah.
sunset of 2025 is the owner occupancy. So we can't
requirement.
owner occupancy from January 1st of this year to January 1st of 2025. Now, we did have, after we adopted our ordinance last year and we put into place a owner occupancy requirement, and there were a few ADUs that were built that got their permits and had to do that deed restriction. Those deed restrictions still stand. Or they were permitted before January 1st of 2020. But it's only for that, the owner occupancy deed restriction that's
Okay. And are we allowed, or have other cities, if we put that in our municipal code or something, can we sunset that with the thing, or?
Yeah, we're looking at, our language would make it very clear. So it's not, so in 2025, if somebody's not thinking it through, and they're doing something, it'll be really clear right there that that's going to be available to them, that they would have. I think we're putting it in there that it have to have the deed restriction starting any permits issued after January 1st of 2025.
Okay, subject to them not extending it or not.
So
changing that.
we wouldn't be saying you can't do it. We would be saying after this date, you would be allowed to, you'd have to provide that deed restriction.
Okay, and one last confirmation on the Streamlined multifamily new construction ADU. Is there no size limit? Did I read that right? That no ADU size limit can be imposed?
Correct. And that's new construction of a detached ADU. So it's not new. So in all of these cases, that multifamily structure has to be there. It would just be a detached accessory dwelling unit.
I see. So, for example, if there was a single house on a R3 lot, that single house is 1,000 square feet, they could build a 2,000 square foot ADU?
No.
Okay.
I'm just going to pull up my notes.
Sure.
So if there's a single family structure or streamlined, there are only two options. One would be wholly within, so they'd have to use some portion of the existing, or a new detached structure. In that detached structure, this was that second category of streamlined, was 800 square foot limit. That's a single family dwelling unit on the site.
Multi.
Doesn't matter what the zone is if it's single, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last question is, do you think this will come back to us as an ordinance in July or August, or do you have any idea there?
I would like to have it in, I think July is probably going to be more reasonable. I know that, unfortunately our council chambers were due for an upgrade. And so we're trying to mesh all these different technologies of different eras. And, so to have that telephonic capability where people can call in their public comments, may not be by the June meeting. So I would say it would likely be July that we're going to see this. And it may still be, again, this Zoom meeting, but the calling capability where we could, a person can hear the testimony and then be able to provide their comment right then and there, is we want to have that more robust ability rather than, I just heard all of this public hearing and now I have to type up my 3 minutes of, that's just a bit much for the public. And I just want to be fair to the public. I know this is a big topic with a lot of interest.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sorry, speaking of the public, for Ms. Osborne's question, is there any occupancy limit that is in California or could be on units in total or anything, or some fire minimum, maximum or something? How does that work with occupancy limit?
I don't know if there would be for building.
There are health code provisions for occupancy. So we could converse with the building official and see if those may come into play.
Yeah, I don't think that we can put that limit here in this ordinance, but we can at least come back with that information when we bring the ordinances before you, so you know that there's, what the occupancy is per building code.
Okay. Yeah, because theoretically you could have a 2-bedroom ADU and put 4 bunk beds and rent them out individually. So it's interesting. I don't know what the rule is on that, so I'd like to get more information when the ordinance does come back. So, all right, thank you very much. I appreciate all the great information.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Yeah, I had a question. So if I'm reading this right, a multifamily non-livable space, a place like Legato, if they had a bunch of storage rooms, they could put in over 25 ADUs because they've got over 116 apartments there, or they're planning on it.
They couldn't right now.
Well, not right now, but let's say it were built. And similarly, the Galleria, they could actually put up 2 detached of any size because they've got mega setback there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just
I mean, yeah.
pondering it.
I don't mean to say it as if I want that. I just want to say that that's what the requirements are at the state level.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other, Commissioner Ong, did you have a question or comment?
Forgot to lower my hand.
No problem at all. Are there any other questions for staff, or would anyone like to make a motion to receive and file?
We already did that.
I'll make a motion to receive and file.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Tupro. Commissioner Hensley, was that your second?
Oh, yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you. I will do a roll call vote then. Motion is to receive and file. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Yes.
Commissioner Topero.
Yes.
Commissioner Stretzenberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Ung.
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yes.
Vice Chair Glad.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. The motion passes unanimously. That takes us to public participation on non-agenda items. The section is intended to provide members of the public with the opportunity to comment on any subject that does not appear on this agenda for action. The section is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes to address the commission. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once. Written requests, if any, will be considered first under this section. Do we have any written requests from any members of the public?
We have no new e-comments. Just so you know, for the record, that on e-comments, there are 2,200 characters allowed, which equates to approximately 3 minutes, just FYI. And that's for the public knowledge too. And there are none. I'll defer to analyst Portalese to see if there are any new emails.
Thank you. And there are no new emails for public participation on an agenda item. So I have nothing.
Perfect, thank you. That brings us to items from staff. Any items from staff?
Yes. So I wanted to just give, and I know it's not going to be as brief as I'd like it to be. I wanted to just give an update on the latest orders on COVID-19 and how they impact different land uses while we're in the state of emergency. And I'm bringing this to you. I'm not going to give like the whole laundry list of what the order is, but more so on the topics that are kind of in your realm. And so with the COVID-19 crisis, it's created a severe hardship for our local business community. And a lot of businesses are eager to reopen as quickly as possible. And we understand that there are various orders from public agencies in the state of California, and it can be confusing to track what is or isn't allowed. As businesses look for guidance, I want to make the clarification that the city of Redondo Beach is following the lead of and is under the jurisdiction of Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. We don't have our own local public health agency, so we're under the Los Angeles County order. The latest safer at home order from LA County was issued last week on May 13th. The order includes changes to various business operations and the protocols for those reopening. In addition to all those essential businesses that we're, familiar with, it does list the lower risk businesses that are allowed to open, but they're allowed to open with limited curbside, doorside, or delivery only, and required to have a reopening protocol in place. And I know that the county is checking that. So they need to have gone through the process of filling out that Appendix B of the county order, that shows that they're taking into consideration their reopening protocol. The county order also lists the higher risk businesses that should still remain closed. And that includes things like bars and nightclubs and gyms, fitness centers, movie theaters. It does include personal grooming establishments. I'm sure a lot of us are anxious to get haircuts. It includes playgrounds and community centers. So there's a list of those. Regarding the pier, that's also under that, where the order currently requires that to be continued to be closed. Now, as soon as we find out more information, if that ends up where the piers are, the restrictions are lifted, we will be reaching out to the businesses on the pier to make them aware of what they need to do to reopen. The current order continues the restriction that indoor and outdoor dining is not permitted. However, in preparation for restaurants reopening when they can, I'm sure it will have limited some restrictions. We have provided those businesses with the latest state guidance on what the steps are that a restaurant could consider and should be taking when they are ready to reopen. So that when the county gives that green light, they'll already have those things in place. Similar to, what I mentioned with those low risk businesses of having that reopening protocol. It is our understanding that the governor has authorized some counties to loosen the state's shutdown rules. Just today, I believe that Ventura County received that authorization as the first county in Southern California to be approved for the accelerated reopen. However, a county can only do that when they meet the necessary criteria, which includes, for a certain number of days, a reduced number of cases and hospitalizations related to COVID-19. LA County will likely be one of the last counties to reach those milestones, since the county continues to outpace other parts of the state in those criteria. So right now, that's why we don't have any in-store shopping or restaurant dining yet in LA County. When the orders are amended, when we get to that point, and they are amended to allow for some level of modified table dining, the city recognizes that restaurants will likely be faced with accommodating social distancing, and that during the public health emergency, their typical capacity that they would have indoors would then effectively be reduced within their current physical footprint. So to address the potential capacity issue, the city has looked at issuing the possibility that we could issue temporary use permits, or TUPs, to utilize the privately owned parking areas of the restaurant and the outdoor spaces of the restaurant to appropriately distribute the seating areas to accommodate whatever emergency orders go and get in place for that in restaurant dining. The staff has recommended to the city council that we make TUPs available for restaurants reopening. And the city already has that TUP process in the city's zoning ordinance. So it doesn't require any change of ordinance. We already have this mechanism in place. The TUP regulations do have criteria regarding not jeopardizing public health, safety, and general welfare. So to address this, our department would require that the restaurant has to submit a social distancing or reopening protocol similar to what LA County would require, especially the health division of the county, just to demonstrate that they have a commitment to protecting the public health during the emergency. The TUP would limit the expanded space to allow for the same capacity of tables and patrons as currently exists. So it wouldn't be that they could expand and now have more capacity, but rather that they would, it's just allowing them to meet the social distancing space. It is expected that many of the restaurants requesting a TUP will intend to use a part of their parking lot. In that case, they may not need all of it. And so any parking that would not be utilized, we look to, where safe and feasible, keep that parking while they use the other portion for patrons, but just having visual and physical barriers between the parking and the patrons. The temporary use of the parking lot for dining space would only be for the duration of the public health emergency. So after the TUP has expired, which we would set at that the end of the emergency, the site would be expected to be returned to the operating conditions for the site prior to the public health emergency. So it wouldn't be a permanent override of what approvals that you have done as a commission. To address any of the concerns that there might be from neighbors of noise effects, we've recommended the city council that it would be a 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Timeframe on the TUP. And then also because the application for the TUP is only because of the emergency, that otherwise they have their capacity and they would have that ability, we have requested that council forego they suspend the fees of the TUP. It's a $210 application fee, and we would just ask for them to suspend that. There may be evolving issues that we need to address as we see what the county orders are. So we'll want to make sure that those are incorporated and required in the application. I just wanted to provide you with this update because I know that this is kind of in your interests as a planning commission. We're doing what we can to try to help businesses reopen as quickly as they can and get back to as normal as possible.
The problem that I see that nobody seems to really be addressing is that would be great to have the businesses reopen and things to get back to as close to normal as possible. But the reality of it too is for a lot of folks, unless you're offering the same sort of provisions and are really looking at options for childcare, you're just going to have a lot of people whose businesses start to reopen, but employees that are unable to go back to work. And I got to say, I've yet to hear anything from the city or the county where they're really even looking at this issue or talking about this issue. And it seems to be a huge failing that I'm seeing across the board.
Childcare is reopened. It is the childcare providers have to, provide their protocol for. It's under the county's order as an essential business to support the fact that different.
Only for essential workers, though. I mean, and if you look at reality is, schools are closed. Summer camps are canceling left and right. I'm sure we've all heard, different ones canceling or filing for bankruptcy or what have you. The city ones have not indicated whether or not they're even going to be open, the ones through the school district, let alone others. So those don't seem to be much in the way of options.
And understood. Again, we're under the LA County order, so we can't say we've decided that these are, can open and these, so we can't make a decision and go beyond that. That being said, we're trying to assist what we can. Right now we're exploring what could we do in Riviera Village in the right-of-way space for business and not just restaurants, but retailers. So there's, we're working with what our confines are. I totally understand the concern, that there are different levels and of regulations on this. Again, we don't have our own health department as a municipality. if you hear any of the county orders, you'll know that
It's Long Beach or LA County,
and
right?
Long Beach and Pasadena. Yeah.
Right. And I understand that our hands are tied to some degree, but I'm hoping that as you're communicating with the city council and as the city council and the mayor are communicating with the county, that this is something that they're emphasizing, because, I'm sure we're all walking around our neighborhood talking with, local residents, and this is a concern that I hear over and over and over again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Forbes. I do appreciate that. We're looking for creative solutions to the situation we find ourselves in. Are there any other comments or questions?
I would just add, if any of you have, I think that Commissioner Glad's point is a good one. If you're hearing certain things or want to make recommendations, feel free to reach out to me individually, with those suggestions, so I can, kind of pass that along. I can't promise that I'm going to have the answer that you're looking for, but I can at least, make people aware that that's a concern or question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, or would anyone like to make a motion to receive and file?
Before you do, I just want to confirm, sir, that there are no new e-comments submitted for this item, and I will again defer to Analyst Portalese regarding emails.
And there are no new emails for this item either.
Thank you.
Motion to receive and file?
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Glad, second by Commissioner Topper, I believe. We'll do a roll call vote here. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Aye.
Commissioner Topero.
Yes.
I apologize. I just saw Commissioner Hensley. Is your hand raised?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry to do it in the middle of the vote. Just a quick question. There's no actual document to receive and file, right? It was all a verbal description, so I don't think there is a receive and file. There's nothing to receive and file.
You're correct.
Very good point. Sorry.
Okay.
You don't need a motion. If there's no other questions on that, then we'll move on to commission items and referrals to staff. Commissioner Rodriguez, do you have any referrals for staff or commission items?
No.
Commissioner Topero?
Yeah, just the whole thing about the open space, because again, it was very painfully blatant looking at the picture of Armour, the bird's eye view of that housing, that there's so little outdoor space. And I really hope that it does come on the agenda, later this year, after summer or something. But I think we really need to address open space in our city, because the lots are just being concreted it's just phenomenal. And that picture really depicts how much lack of open space there is.
Perfect. Very good. Commissioner Strutzenberg.
For what? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Any commission items or referrals for staff?
Oh, none. Thank you.
Sorry. Commissioner
None here. Thank you.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yeah, I did have one referral. I'll try. So I'm going to give a short background statement, and then I'll make my motion. So almost to Commissioner Tuppero's point of, we'd had made a referral to staff previously about open space discussion, and it's a little bit as a commission unknown when it's going to come back or what the status is. So same with the project on Prospect Avenue that we had delayed that still has not returned. So I'd like to kind of keep some kind of running track so we could know what's going on and not have to ask staff at each meeting or if they don't, how to update us. So that's the background. My motion is I'd like to direct staff to create a matrix of items, either or both continued from previous planning commission meetings and previous referrals to staff to be included as a consent calendar item for each planning commission meeting, starting with the July meeting. And the matrix would include the original date of the item and a title and a status and the expected return date to the planning commission.
Need a second and a formal vote on that?
Yep.
I'll second it.
A motion by Commissioner Hensley, a second by Commissioner Toporowski. We'll do the roll call vote here. Commissioner Rodriguez,
Yes.
Commissioner Toporowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Glad,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. Thank you, Commissioner Hensley.
Yeah, no problem. Can I confirm something? Director Forbes, is that clear? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Glad, any commission items or referrals for staff?
None on my side. Thank you.
The only notice I would make is that this Saturday at the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center, there's a free household hazardous waste and paper shredding event. Great way to clean out your garage and anything else you need. Takes us to item O, council action on planning commission matters. Do you have anything there?
Nothing there.
Okay. That brings us to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Rodriguez, second by Commissioner Glad. Roll call vote. Commissioner Rodriguez,
Yes.
Commissioner Toporowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Glad,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. It passes unanimously at 8:41. Thank you, everyone, and stay safe and healthy.
Thank you all.
Thank
very
you
much.
all.
For your weekend,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.